you suffered for many years from a low self-esteem when you were younger, and it manifested itself in your relationship with food. Am I right in thinking you used to be an obsessive and emotional eater? Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. I struggled for about, I think looking back now, 3 years. Then it stopped when I went travelling for a year, funny enough.
So how old were you when it began?
21, and I was diagnosed with a condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, so it does affect the hormones. So I think in my own understanding of being a nutritional therapist, I think a lot of that had a lot to do with me sort of trying to control my food because my hormones were imbalanced. But actually digging deeper than that, there was a lot of issues that I'd never really dealt with. When I went travelling for a year, I think I masked it because the travelling was a mask. It was a great mask, and I returned, and it was probably at its worst because I just never dealt with the root of the problem for so long. And I remember those 3 years when being at work was probably the hardest time for me. I was working in marketing at the time, and I was looking after what we called the booze trolley. And we had sweets on there and all sorts, and it's just the worst thing to look after when you have an eating disorder.
Yeah.
Every Friday I would push that along and just think to myself, how can I resist? And yeah, that happened every Friday, and I just remember the feeling of feeling overwhelmed and feeling like I couldn't control the urge to want to eat this food that I was just so obsessed with. But I think I went towards the food because I didn't really want to deal with the core issues of how I was feeling at that time. Whether I felt really stressed or anxious or overwhelmed, or felt like I didn't have the self-esteem really to get through things. I felt unworthy when I was at work and I was given a project that I felt like I wouldn't be able to finish on time. Right. I would literally go straight to the food because I almost had an addiction to food at the time. Every time I ate a piece of chocolate, it would just release all these endorphins and the amazing taste, but it would last for a split second, and I'd want it more, and then the next bite wouldn't be as good as the first bite. So it was tricky, and I think in that moment the obsession with food took over rather than the obsession of the unworthiness, and I grabbed hold of that feeling more, which was the feeling of the addiction. So that literally took over the whole feeling of the unworthiness. So it's quite interesting actually.
The great news is that you are now healed from PCOS. You are no longer an obsessive or emotional eater. You are now a qualified naturopath nutritionist. So, you know, the story to this point has turned into something beautiful. But I also know that the control elements perhaps might not be food anymore. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the things that I discovered through my eating disorder was I loved to control food, and I didn't grab the control of food, and to be honest with you, food controlled me. Wow. Especially looking back, and I think for my kind of character, I'm a high achiever. I do work a lot, and if I'm not careful, then I can make myself a bit too busy and, you know, book in too many things, unrealistic goals that I can do, like 20,000 things to do in a day. Sure.
We're all laughing because we're like, yeah, me too.
And I think through that, that's my way of controlling things. But I'm quite aware of that, so I need to sometimes tell myself that I need to watch myself when it comes to that, because I don't want to control my husband. Right. And I think through being married, especially the last 2 years, I've noticed little traits that I perhaps would have done with food, although I don't have an issue with food at all anymore. I think you need to be careful what is the next thing you're controlling, but I'm very aware of that. Yeah. So yeah, it's one of my triggers that I don't get nearly as close as I ever used to be, but I'm very aware. When it comes to addictions, and especially eating disorders, I recently did a course to help women overcome eating disorders. Amazing. It's extremely hard to lead, but it's a journey. And one of the things we have to say in that course is, ladies, there are things that are available after, counsellors, nutritional therapists that can help you. But the first thing you need to do is actually get to the root of the problem. Why are you trying to control the food? Why are you addicted to food? And for me, that was my journey. It was actually surrender. I just couldn't cope. I couldn't cope. I got to the point where I was on my hands and my knees, and I thought, I can't continue living life like this.
Right.
And there were things that I knew I could shift. And at that time, I thought, well, what is in my life that is stressing me out and overtaking me? And at that time, it was my work.
Wow.
So I gave up my job, gave up the money and everything, and I don't know what was next for me. I had no idea. And I think through that rediscovery and just taking the next job, I actually discovered a lot about food, and that was my journey towards recovery. Food, mindset, letting go of busyness, and that was when I started to recover slowly. I think it is a daily practice for me. I have to be careful what I listen to in my own head every time I wake up in the morning.
Wow.
So I could go the other way, but I choose not to.
Wow.
I choose not to. So, I mean, I've come a long way, but I'm still human, and
Yeah.
I think you just need to be careful and know what your triggers are. And with self-esteem, I think I still do struggle with it sometimes, but I don't feed into it. No way. No,
Wow.
There's no point. It doesn't get you anywhere.
For anybody watching this particular theme of self-esteem, and they've heard something that really resonates with them, if you were to give them a word of encouragement or a practical take-home.
Do one thing that you love at least every day. Be kind to yourself. For me, it's having a green juice or...
I literally thought you were going to say a nice large glass of red wine.
No, but just, it could be, I don't know, it could be absolutely anything. Having your nails done, having a massage.
Okay, yes, I'll take that.
Yeah, you've got to like, everyone has, so there's so many things that women love, like the possibilities are endless. So just do one thing that you love each day.
Yeah.
Even if that's reading like a chapter in a book,
Yeah.
like that will really encourage
That's great.
your self-esteem.
Thank you. Next time on the 7 series.
And this side, which sounds funny, right? And it's like, but this side of your face is great and this side of your face isn't. So I go around with like half my hair covering a side of my face that, that is like the imperfect side.